Hello and welcome to another episode of the Diet Obsessed podcast. I am your host, Veronica Santarelli. I am a certified personal trainer, nutrition and weight loss coach, and this podcast is for those of us who are just obsessed with all things related to improving health and longevity, with a special emphasis on food, fitness, and diet culture. All right, let's get into the show. Now, if you want to support the show, there's a couple ways you can do that. So this is one of my free episodes. I do a free episode every other week, and then every other week I do a premium content show. You can subscribe to the premium content shows through Apple Podcasts, through Patreon. Those are a couple ways you can support. If you subscribe on YouTube, you aren't actually getting anything extra. You're just following the show. That really helps us on YouTube. And then just leaving a rating or review. That really helps as well. So I appreciate your support. All right, everyone. Let's get right into my regular segments. And then I do have a good media review at the end, as always. So I wanted to talk about a couple of really random things that I see they keep popping up on social media and also in my regular life too. And also I think, and I addressed this, my last show was behind the paywall. I did address just some of the unhealthy habits that I had, just really overeating on candy. So I've been very, very focused this past couple weeks. So I'm going to be talking about that in my healthy habits. Now, I do have a VIP episode next week. I will be talking about a very unfortunate situation that happened to me yesterday at a doctor's office that I am still working through my emotions. Very, very unhappy, very unpleasant situation, to say the least. So I will be discussing that on my VIP episode. One of the things that I did yesterday after that unfortunate situation negatively impacted my mental health, because I had a half day off yesterday, and that was not how I wanted to spend my day. So I came home and I watched Stanley Tucci on Disney Hulu, Stanley Tucci through Italy. Now, I've been seeing all of his clips on social media, and just the pasta, the incredible food that he's been eating in Italy, and this series was in different parts of Italy, like Sicily and some of the very rural parts of Italy that most people never visit. And so it was very interesting. So eggplant is very popular in Italian cuisine. And I'm someone that has never liked the texture of eggplant. I've loved it when it's been blended into like a dip. I've had that at Mediterranean restaurants. That is incredibly delicious. And that's a good texture, like a dip texture, because eggplant has a mushy texture. And some people like to deep fry it, bread it. In this series, they're doing it the authentic way, which does not involve breading it and frying it. And they had a couple dishes where they featured this eggplant. And I have to say, I would definitely try it if I was in Italy, but did that appeal to me when I was watching it? I mean, the fact that they put it on some bread, they made this layered, it was almost like a lasagna, but it was layers of eggplant. So it was like an eggplant parm. But it was, it looked just like sauce and eggplant without a lot of cheese. And again, they did put it on some bread. When they put it on bread, I'm like, okay, there's the texture that's needed in this dish. But overall, I was like, some of the stuff, there was this scene where this chef was cooking for him, and he actually, to get the flavor of the sea in this dish, he put rocks from the sea, these big, really ugly rocks, and he found some that were covered with algae. He's like, oh, the ones that are covered with algae, and then he's stirring a lot of rocks in this dish, and I could understand that brininess, and also probably some of the nutrients, because algae is supposed to have all these great properties if it's the right algae, right? There also could be some things that maybe aren't good to ingest on those rocks. As I was looking at them, I'm like, and he's like, the chef was like, oh, don't you the flavor of the sea? And Stanley, he's like, maybe a little too much. So I think even the chef was like, oh, maybe I put too many rocks in this dish. But it was really fascinating to see. And the thing I love about Italian cooking is it's so simple. A lot of times it's just these few ingredients, and the way that it's prepared, it's so simple but so delicious. So if you are having a really bad day, going and watching Stanley Tucci's series on Hulu and partnered with Disney, really good. I think I'm going to start over and watch the first part of the series. I think it's the parts of Italy that we're more familiar with. But I was fascinated to see some of these other rural areas that aren't as well traveled. So that was good for me yesterday. One thing I've been seeing, I saw this on CNN. So I talked to my family the other day, and they were telling me how many ticks there are. So they're out mowing their lawns. They're big yard people. And my mom was saying how she had to remove a tick from her skin. It was burrowed in. She found one on the dog the other day. She had to remove that. They're everywhere. It's really bad this year. And ticks give Lyme disease. And what they do is they hang out on the corners of leaves so that as you're walking by, they latch onto you. And they go into little areas, like the places that my family's found them are in the middle of their back, in these very, very hard to reach areas. And I'm freaked out. I go home to Maine next week, and I'm like, okay, I will not be doing any walking through the woods. I would like to remain tick free. And I just learned that there's this new allergy that they can create called the alpha-gal allergy. And it's an allergy to red meat and dairy that's created from tick bites. I guess apparently in Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts, they're doing a lot of cooking to align with people's new allergies to red meat and dairy, because so many people are getting affected by these ticks. Crazy. And then the last thing that I wanted to bring up that is a big topic these days are data centers. Now, I talked to somebody at my job that was really angry. He was more concerned with power outages that were happening because near him there was a data center being built. And I live in a pretty populated area in Arizona. There isn't going to be a data center built within a mile of me, thankfully. But have you seen these clips on social media of what's happening to these communities that are near data centers? It's ruining the environment. It's negatively impacting their health. Their water is running this dark, contaminated color. I'm going to play a clip, but even the sound in the air and the way that these big, huge structures are moving into communities that don't have enough water for their citizens. And these data centers take up a ton of natural resources. And what is the cost to our health? What is the impact to people that live in a close proximity to these places? I'm going to play this clip. of this family and what they're going through living near a data center. Here's the clip.
This is our cold water pressure in the kitchen. This is where I fill up water for storage. Those are the things we have to fill up to flush the toilets.
So you can see the sediment from the data center. Wow, and that's just from the water coming out of your faucet.
Yeah. And this is what's in all the pipes.
Just the well itself is probably $20,000, and that's not counting any of the
all
faucets.
the replacement of the fixtures and faucets and toilets and the lines that come underneath the house. It's overwhelming because you really feel like you are up against this huge wall that you can't penetrate. There's nothing that you can do, and they don't care.
I'm here in Mansfield, Georgia, driving by Meta's new 2 million square foot data center facility. Facilities like this are being used to power things like ChatGPT and other AI tools that are becoming integrated into our daily life.
Data centers, going to be a very hot item.
This entire supercomputer is built to power Grok.
We see data centers as the most exciting asset class.
Meta is building a 2 gigawatt plus data center that is so large it would cover a significant part of Manhattan.
But data centers come with big costs. From light and noise pollution to the environmental impacts to the potential rising costs of energy bills. These facilities put extraordinary demand on the power grid and require entirely new infrastructure.
Oh my God. They should be responsible for that, not us.
Search the internet for profits that Meta has made, Amazon, Microsoft. They can afford to pay for their own generation.
We came to Georgia to ask two questions. What's the true cost of the AI revolution, and who should be paying for it? Your house is here, and the data center is right there.
It's less than 400 yards.
Beverly and Jeff Morris bought their home an hour's drive from downtown Atlanta in 2016. But their roots in the community run much deeper.
Being in the country has always just been my peace and my therapy. When we found this place, we decided that this was it. It was perfect.
I was actually raised probably 5 miles from here. It felt like coming home.
The data center that's now the Morris' next-door neighbor happens to be owned by Meta, the company you know for Facebook and Instagram, but has also been breaking into artificial intelligence. They started construction on this data center campus in 2018.
Definitely changed everything. They destroyed the environment, taking down all the trees across the road.
Beautiful pines, beautiful forest.
The light pollution is...
You don't have to have a night light in the house. You can walk around the house at night and see everything. It's that bright.
This is a video of the dust from Facebook where the construction was. This is what it looks like right now out my front door. The wind blowing in all of this stuff from across the construction, across the road.
This is all from Meta.
Yeah, I was standing on my front porch. I think eventually that affected our well water. We're on a well here, and we started having issues with our well in 2018. I have to replace the hot water heater. I've replaced 2 washing machines and a dishwasher because of the sediment that's coming in.
A lot of what the Morrises are facing is from the polluting effects of this massive construction, but that's only one part of the story. There are serious costs to communities once data centers are operational too. To explain that, we have to back up for a second. I wouldn't blame you if you were asking yourself, what the heck is a data center anyway? Their origins date back to early, clunky supercomputers or mainframes in the 1950s and 60s. And then in the 90s, with the birth of the internet, the modern data center was born as a way for internet providers to connect businesses and the world to the web. In the 2010s, data centers became larger as they became critical to new cloud storage.
To the cloud. With the cloud, we share a sync photo that allows us to all work on the same documents.
Everything from your pet photos to entire workplaces to files for video streaming, like this video you're watching right now. We're in the cloud. Today, we are in the midst of a tectonic shift in processing needs, as large as the birth of the internet. artificial intelligence.
A transformational moment for data center demand.
But the thing is, AI processing demands are much larger. One report showed that a Google search using a ChatGPT-like AI feature used 30 times as much power as a normal Google search. In the next 3 years, data center use of electricity is expected to double or even triple. And the state of Georgia has the fastest data center growth in the entire country.
The two biggest reasons data centers come to Georgia are that electricity rates for industrials, which is the class that they're in, are 42% below the national average. And the second biggest one are data center tax breaks. They received over $180 million in tax breaks last year.
The week we were in Georgia, a showdown was happening at the state capitol over 2 bills tied to data centers.
Senator Hofstadter had proposed 2 different bills, and one of them was SB 34, which was the data centers bill, to move the burden of the operational costs of data centers from ratepayers to the data centers themselves.
And what is SB 94?
That is the Consumer Utility Council, a legal advocate for ratepayers and small businesses.
Bills like these are the result of mounting residential anger and the work of dedicated advocates across the state, like Diana Dietz, who lives 50 miles away from the Capitol in Fayette County.
This is a huge industrial project plopped in a residential area. This was the original plan, 122 acres. And then the Development Authority got involved.
In 2022, officials in Fayette County voted to annex and rezone an additional 412 acres for a data center campus. Fayetteville's City Council voted 5-0 in favor of the development, despite passionate opposition from some local residents. The site was then purchased by QTS, which is owned by Blackstone, for $153.8 million.
These speculators, investors, are secretly buying up land right next to homeowners. And it was all done so that when we all went to the 4 public hearings between the county and the city, it was a done deal. This is the one that's currently under construction, and this is where Gene and Joe are.
Gene and Joe Marshall live on the edge of Fayetteville in Fayette County on an 8-acre property.
This driveway is almost the line for Fayette County versus Fayetteville, where QTS's property is located. We have absolutely no say in anything that happens over here.
Despite their vocal opposition to the project, living next to construction on all sides of their home has become their daily reality for the last 2 years.
They do nightly pours over here, and in the back part at the other building, the lights are shining and there is noise. 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. So they don't stop. Oh yeah, sure.
We went to visit Nikki Vanderslice, who heads up the Fayette County Economic Development Authority, a non-governmental agency that played a central role in the marketing of the land for data center development.
For residents who live alongside these data centers, life has become very difficult. What do you say to them?
Well, I say to them that there's a couple of things. One, we were very transparent. The Development Authority was very open about attracting a data center, and there wasn't any resistance until it came to their property specifically.
Vanderslice says data centers are good for the community, even if some don't see the benefits yet.
In 2021, that property paid $36,000 in property taxes total. In 2024, on raw land, it paid $1.13 million in property taxes. That contributed $760,000 to our local Board of Education. I'm apologetic that they're being impacted, but I also see the benefits of what the companies are doing and how they're improving our economy. And so there's the balance that when you have, 200 out of 120,000 people, that you have to balance what's the highest and best use for the whole of the community.
It's just the height of selfishness to imagine that one county's benefit to the huge detriment of 158 other counties in Georgia that now have to pay higher electric bills is okay. It's not okay. It drives inequity. It's very immoral too.
That's Patty Durand, and as you can tell, she does not agree with Nikki Vanderslice. Patty is a longtime consumer advocate and expert on energy policy who's been raising the alarm about rising costs of electricity related to data centers.
Are data centers going to drive up energy costs for
residents across the state.
On May 1st, Georgia Power residential ratepayers experienced a 24% rate increase. Just since 2023, Georgia Power has raised rates 6 times.
And related to those rate hikes, remember those 2 bills we mentioned earlier? We were with Patty as she was watching a live feed of the Senate floor.
Today is crossover day, which means any bill that does not get through one side of the House or the Senate to the other side is dead for the year. And right now, Senate Bill 34 is not on that list.
By later that evening, both bills had failed to get a vote. As disappointed and angry as Patty was, she wasn't too surprised.
Georgia legislators are getting soaked with money from Georgia Power.
Is that a conflict of interest?
Absolutely. It is clearly corrupting. This is the highest paid utility CEOs in the country. Why is the poorest region in the country paying the most to our CEOs?
$23 million, $33 million.
It's ridiculous how much money they make.
Our time in Georgia is crucial to understanding what's happening all across the country because the growth of data centers is not slowing down anytime soon. And tech billionaires have already been complaining about the amount of red tape involved in powering this growth.
Getting energy permitted is like a very heavily regulated government function. And if you're talking about building large new power plants or large build outs, that is just a heavily regulated thing.
The regulatory body in question is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, also known as FERC, an independent and historically nonpartisan agency that regulates interstate transmission of electricity, natural gas, and oil. But just last month, President Trump signed an executive order placing FERC under White House control. And he's been boasting about his ability to fast-track new projects.
We're going to get very rapid approvals in the United States. Like with the AI plans, under emergency declaration, I can get the approvals done myself without having to go through years of waiting.
With this alliance between the federal government, Silicon Valley, and utility monopolies, who's looking out for regular Americans like the Morrises?
During the peak season, our electric bill was maybe $250. Yeah. And now it's probably $400.
Your electricity bill has doubled. Wow.
It's been a struggle.
Every month it's a struggle. Jeff would like to retire, but he keeps working because we have to pay our bills.
Do you think that people should have to pay more because of data centers?
No, absolutely not. They should pay for that difference. It's hard enough for a regular person to pay their electric bill as it is. I don't think that's right at all.
We reached out to the big tech companies, including Meta and QTS, asking for an interview and a tour of their facilities, but both declined to participate in the story. Duran says despite the bill's failure, the fight will go on. A number of other states have similar bills up for debate right now.
The reason I think other states should pass it, whether we do or not, is that data centers could possibly come to their state next. There needs to be legislation to protect them because by all accounts, data center growth is going to be very fast.
I think what fascinates me is these are not going away. There's only more coming in. You might be near one, somebody listening to this show. And apparently there's very little that we can do. I saw this other clip about somehow Utah was able to drive this business out. I think it was Utah, but there's a lot of protesting going on, and apparently these companies have a lot of ins with governments, and I know that there's voting happening and some of the stuff that we can do with our local governments, but it doesn't sound like there's a lot we can do to prevent these from coming in. But we do need to be vocal if we don't want them in our communities. And when you're seeing the impact here, I know I personally will be voting against. If I have a chance to vote against these coming into my community, I'm definitely taking that opportunity to vote. So anyway, that is my mental health check-in of the week. I hope all of you are having a great mental health week yourselves. Now, speaking of Italy and Sardinia, there was this article that I read in the BBC about the secret behind Italy's rarest pasta. And so there's this pasta that is created in this place in Sardinia. And it tells the story about this woman. She's 62 years old, named Paola Abrani. She wakes up every day at 7 a.m. to begin making her soufflendu, the rarest pasta in the world. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Soufflendu actually means the threads of the god. And for more than 300 years, this recipe and technique have only been passed down through the women in the Abrani family. Of course, they guard the recipe. Apparently, the writer of this was a guest in one of the Abrani women's homes, and she had actually let a team of engineers from Barilla Pasta come to see if they could reproduce her technique with a machine, and they couldn't. So that's really interesting. This other owner of another pasta place called Carlo Petrini, so he's the president of Slow Food International, and he wanted to see if his company could execute it. But everyone's failing. No one can actually execute this technique. The secret, they say, is specifically in the technique of the hands. It's made by pulling and folding semolina dough into 256 perfectly even strands with the tips of your fingers, and then stretching the needle-thin wires diagonally across a circular frame in an intricate 3-layer pattern. It's so difficult and time-consuming to prepare that for the past 200 years, the sacred dish has only been served to the faithful who complete a 33-kilometer pilgrimage on foot or horseback from Nuoro to the village of Lula for the biannual feast of San Francesco. In order to make enough for the last festival for the 1,500 pilgrims that made the trek, she worked 5 hours every day for a month to make 50 kilograms of the pasta. And for the larger 9-day feast in May, she'll prepare 4 times as much. That is some dedication. There are only 3 ingredients: semolina, wheat, water, and salt. But elbow grease. She's like, everything's done by hand. So it's really just She said it's very similar to modeling clay. You divide the dough into smaller and smaller sections, work it into rolled cylindrical shapes. The hardest part is understanding the dough with your hands. When it needs to be more elastic, she'll dip her fingers into a bowl of salt water. When it needs more moisture, she'll dip them into a separate bowl of regular water. And she's like, it can take years to really understand that balance. She's like, it's like a game with your hands, but once you achieve it, that's when magic can happen. Once it reaches that right consistency, she picks up the cylindrical strands to stretch and fold the dough, doubling it as she presses the hands of the soufflendu into her palms. And then this sequence is repeated 8 times. With each sweeping pull, the dough becomes thinner and thinner. After 8 sequences, she's left with 256 even strands, about half as wide as angel hair pasta. See, I don't really like thin pasta like that. Half as wide as angel hair pasta. Angel hair pasta to me is too thin. She then carefully lays the strands on a circular base, one on top of another to form a cross, trimming any excess from the ends with her fingers before repeating the process over and over. 3 layers would be formed, and then that's taken out to the sun to dry. After several hours, the layers hardened into delicate sheets of white, razor-thin threads resembling stitched lace. A brainy then broke the circular sheets into crude strips and packed them into boxes ready for the San Francesco's feast, prior to them being placed in boiling sheep's broth with grated pecorino. And then it's offered as a thick soup to the pilgrims. Interesting, a thick soup. All that work for a soup. I mean, I'd love to try it. Looking at the pictures, it almost looks like a corn husk. They are very, very thin strands. Because they were worried about the whole process being lost and the tradition being lost, they did try to teach this at a school, and people would say it was just too much work, and they didn't want to learn it because it just took too long. It was too much elbow grease. She has been making it for some very famous restaurants, some of which are award-winning. She made a squid ink dyed version that won a big prize in Sardinia for the best dish. So, I mean, look, I would love to try it. Knowing myself and the textures that I love, I probably wouldn't be something that I would, become just obsessed with, but I would love to experience it and try it. All of those dishes that I saw last night, I think I just need to expand my palette. When I started this, I talked about how I wanted to do more cooking, and I have been doing a lot more cooking, and I have gotten better with my knife skills, things are coming out better, easier. So I think I can also expand my palette. I think I just need more time and resources to try new things. So I'll get there. I will get there. But anyway, that is my foodie affair of the week. All right, let's get into my healthy habits of the week. Now, so the last time I had a free show, I talked about doing that water fast, and I successfully made it through the water fast and then went into a very lean week, is what I'll call it. And since then, I just recognized that I had created some bad habits for myself. And I've talked on this show about how, I always like that. I like things that I'm eating that are healthy to taste delicious. And that is true. That is true. I think I'd gotten into a habit of I always need bread, or I always need some rice, or I always need, that starchy element. I'm not someone that just likes to eat plain protein or protein and vegetables. But I think I forgot that at my leanest, which when I do feel at my best, my week would always incorporate some meals that were, food is fuel meals, where it would just be eggs without a piece of toast, or it would be just a piece of, leftover chicken that I'm on the run and I'm just going to eat this piece of chicken for breakfast, and it's just it basically helps me continue my fast. If I'm fasting overnight and I go into the morning and I'm just eating just animal protein, for my body, that almost keeps the fasting going and I continue to burn stored body fat. I think I had just forgotten that I did those things. And I again was in this pattern of, I have this segment in my podcast every week of tasty treats. And I'm so much of, and I try to keep most of that on the weekends. And what I realized is that wasn't happening anymore. A lot of it was bleeding into the week. And then the week came about, what delicious things can I eat this week? And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I think for me, I just recognized that I wasn't feeling great. I was overeating and feeling not good. I was feeling stuffed. The extra fat that was being stored I don't know. I just wasn't feeling like what I was doing was working well for me and how I wanted to feel on a regular basis and the energy I wanted to have. And so I made some changes, and I've been pretty consistent with those changes. And so this past week has been like today, for example. Today is going to be one of those whole food days where I've been doing less of my superfood smoothie, more of a lower calorie protein shake that has more protein, less sugar, less carbs. I'll probably for breakfast today just eat eggs, and then I'll have tuna with my shallots and celery for lunch. No bread, no rice, just trying to keep it as lean as possible. I will bring, because I do go to the office today, so I'll bring that superfood smoothie. And I am going to stop putting in that extra juice. I had been doing wanting to use the citrus from outside. And I had been doing that kind of like double ice cube thing in it. I'll tell you, when I took a couple of days off of eating sugar, even fruit, let me tell you, that superfood smoothie was so sweet. I'm like, oh wow, this actually has a good amount of sugar in it. And again, what I was doing when I was just eating to get the food in because I didn't want to waste it. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm just literally stuffing my face full of food when I don't need it. So the past couple weeks since the last time I did this show, I've been really conscious of making leaner choices and just starting to get back to where I like to be. I'm heading into summer. I'm going to be in Maine next week, and I wanted to feel good going into that, seeing my family, and and we'll be doing dinners out. And again, I want those times to feel like a special moment, to feel like an indulgence, and not be stuffing my face constantly in the meantime. So another big thing is waiting 3 to 5 hours between meals. I think I've just been so snacky and just constantly eating. Like at a certain point, I would reach a point where literally there would be very little time that I wouldn't be munching on something. Even if it's like an olive, there'd be food being consumed. And it's like, well, why don't you let yourself get hungry, Veronica? That's been what I've done. Now it's so funny because like the day that I did the 24-hour water fast, I made it, there was like a tough few hours from like, I don't know, it was like 4 to 7. Those were probably the most difficult hours to get through. But when I'm eating on a regular basis and I'm like waiting for that meal and I'm like so hungry, but you should be hungry for your meals. Before the last couple weeks where I've been more conscious, I'd be going into my next meal, like, okay, it's lunchtime, I'm supposed to be having a meal here, but because I've been snacking, I'm not even hungry. I might eat just because it's lunchtime or because this is when I'm supposed to be eating my dinner. And so there is something that feels good when you're actually hungry for that meal, and it tastes so good because you've actually given yourself a span of time where you weren't munching on something. So anyway, just little things like that have made a big impact. The other day, for one of the things I brought to work was I just shredded some cabbage, put my ginger dressing on it, ginger miso dressing, and it was literally just cabbage, and it was like a cabbage salad. It was so good. It was so crunchy. I'm really into my green cabbage these days. But I now replace the white rice all with brown. So that meal, the cabbage, a little bit of brown rice and chicken, has been hitting the spot. I haven't been doing the whole strawberry coconut yogurt bowl. I've just been having a little piece of dark chocolate when I need something sweet at night, and that's perfect. I've also been doing some like a protein shake at night when I need something sweet, instead of, again, eating all this sugar and the coconut and getting all of the honey and all of this stuff. A simple piece of dark chocolate or my vanilla protein shake with some PB2. And then I've been doing like some creatine and tea. Now, because I have lost probably about 4 pounds of fat, I have seen that I have gained some muscle too. The creatine, I think, while I do think it has made me retain some more fluid, I do think I have been gaining more muscle with my consistent workouts. So that's also really good. This past weekend, we go out to eat on Saturday, and usually I'm getting fried food, something really heavy. This time I just chose this hummus plate. Had cucumbers, this spicy hummus, which was okay, and some pita bread. And yeah, I did have a lot of cocktails, but that was a very healthy choice for me to make out to dinner. So feeling more myself, we're going to be going away for a little staycation this Saturday. So again, I like that I'm going into this weekend feeling better, and then I'm going to have a very lean week, go into that. Now it is funny because I do, now that I've been more in like a weight loss mode, fat loss mode, it is funny how weak I feel when I got back on my calories and carbs at night, and how starving I get. I definitely have been very hungry. So drinking some herbal tea, having iced tea that's in between, has been very, very helpful. And being excited for that meal does feel good. Like when you haven't been overeating, going into that meal, it's a good thing. That's how you should feel going into a meal. So just bringing back some of the healthier habits into my life, staying consistent with my workouts. I have been, because I'm not like munching at work anymore, and I have recognized that some of that comes from just maybe being a little bored, having something that I enjoy doing, just biding the time. What I have been doing is going into that exercise room for 2 hours and just walking. Now, I messed up my hip the last time I did that, so I'm not putting pressure on myself to walk at a fast pace. That's really what messed it up before. I'm doing a very, very slow pace and doing a ton of stretching in between, a lot of like hip mobility exercises while I'm doing it. And because I'm walking for so long, again, I'm not trying to hit this 10,000 step goal. I just want to be moving and have something distract me from just being bored and eating. So anyway, those are the things that I've been doing for healthy habits this week. I hope all of you have had some great healthy habits this week yourselves. All right, let's get into my tasty treats. Now, with this whole regimen of, trying to cut back a little bit, I still want delicious things. I still want things that I look forward to. So I looked up some Weight Watchers recipes, and I made this. Well, it's so funny because I did have a little bit of a foodie fail I looked up this recipe because I'd ordered this gluten-free self-rising flour online, and it finally arrived. So I was very excited to find some recipes to go along with this new flour. So I'd found this Weight Watchers recipe, and it was for this lemon, kind of like a lemon loaf. And I was excited to use the lemons from our tree. We have a little lemon tree that's finally starting to produce some fruit. So I gathered up the lemons, and I decided that, so I tried the first batch when I was tipsy Saturday night, when I just felt like I kind of wanted something sweet, and I'm like, well, let me try to make this when I've had too many drinks. And that didn't go well because I decided that I was going to add an entire avocado to this recipe. I like how I think I can just take a recipe, which is science, right? All of the elements have to play into each other scientifically to get it to rise, to get it to bake and be firm. And I'm like, oh, let me just throw a whole avocado in here. It'll be fine. And because what I wanted to do was take the recipe, it was a lemon loaf recipe, and it called for a quarter of a cup of fresh lemon juice, and then the lemon zest. And so I wanted to replace that lemon with chocolate. So I put in, instead of doing the lemon with this first batch, I did a quarter cup of my cacao powder, and then did this whole avocado. I don't know why I put the entire avocado in here. Maybe if I had done half an avocado and baked it longer, it would have come out okay. And when I took it out, I could even see it jiggling. I think I was just nervous about the gluten-free aspect. And a lot of things that are gluten-free kind of have a drier consistency. So I'm like, oh, I want this to be really moist. And anyway, it was terrible. I think again, it might have been okay if it really dense if I baked it longer, but at least it would have solidified and not been just literal mush. Anyway, threw that entire thing away, which we know Veronica hates to do that. So anyway, we did that. The next day, I did get up and I actually followed the recipe. So when I followed the recipe, the lemon loaf came out really nice. I mean, so the sweetener in it had, let me see if I can remember what it had in it. It had 2 eggs, like a cup of the flour, the gluten-free self-rising flour. It had a cup of Greek yogurt, so I just used non-fat, plain Greek yogurt. The lemon juice, the lemon zest. It had 1/3 of a cup of maple syrup or honey. I used maple syrup. That was the sweetener, and then I have maybe a 1/3 of a cup or something, or a quarter of a cup of applesauce. And I made the homemade applesauce last week. And so anyway, so that's really all that's sweetening it is. I probably could have put some protein powder in there. I think it actually would have tasted good if I'd put in some vanilla protein powder. But this is what I do. I'm like adding extra stuff into these recipes and they don't come out good. So I was really just trying to follow the recipe this time. And it did come out pretty nice. It was very light. It was fluffy. It had a nice lemon flavor. Chad enjoyed it, but it was, again, just very, very light, sweet enough where you did feel like you're having a dessert, but not sweet enough where you felt like you're going to give yourself a cavity or that you're making a bad decision. So different from going out and buying all this like Haribo candy and stuffing my face unconsciously with it, right? So I made that, and then I did try the chocolate loaf again. And all I didn't put any avocado in it. I just replaced lemon with the cocoa powder, and it came out nice. It came out, decent. None of these are like overwhelmingly delicious, but they're satisfying, and I definitely am motivated to try more healthy recipes. But I think I'm going to follow more of the Olivia Adriance type recipes instead of Weight Watchers. Now I did make those bagels, those 2-ingredient bagels, I used 4 ingredients technically, but I went and bought one of those big yogurt containers from Costco. And so I made, with that yogurt, I made 2 of the lemon loaves. I made a double batch of the yogurt bagels, which are really good. It's just the bagels and the self-rising flour. And then these were gluten-free, which you couldn't really taste the difference between the gluten-free and the regular. And so Sunday, what I'd done, so when I ordered the hummus plate out on Saturday, I'd ordered blackened chicken with it. But the really spicy hummus with the blackened chicken, the spices just didn't go together. So I'd taken home the chicken. I just had this like little box of chicken left over. Chad had ordered, fried chicken and fries at the restaurant. And so he had some of his leftover fries, which I'm all about taking home, even like some of the leftover fries when we go out to dinner, because waste not, want not, people. We have an air fryer. That air fryer can crisp up fries beautifully. So what I did is I took on Sunday, because again, I want something delicious and indulgent, even when I'm in this healthy regimen, trying to be better. And so what I did is I took one of those bagels, the yogurt bagel, and I toasted it. And I did put some egg wash over the top of it and put the everything bagel seasoning on it, which really delicious. So I toasted that bagel, put a little butter on it, put some of my blackened chicken on it, and then I toasted up the fries, and I had like this little sandwich with my blackened chicken, my healthy bagel bite, little fry. So good. So good. Definitely, an indulgent but high protein, right? The bagels are high protein, the chicken, and yeah, I had just a few fries, so I didn't like overdo it. And then for dessert, I had my cake. So I was very satisfied on Sunday and had more protein than I typically do and less sugar than I typically do. So that was a triumph to get through that Sunday and get through the weekend overall with, just trying to stay somewhat on track. And I also didn't want to like completely cut out food groups. I don't think that works for me, like completely cutting out processed sugar, or completely cutting out fried foods, or just doing whole foods and not having any bread, or like I want to just try to have a little bit more like more portion control, higher protein, and just more conscious eating, not just unconscious stuffing of the face for boredom. That's really my focus right now. So anyway, those were my tasty treats of the week. I hope all of you have had some delicious tasty treats this week yourselves. All right, let's get into my podcast review. Now, I wanted to do this show. I wanted to and I didn't, because it's more self-serving. I think this is something that some people don't talk about. I'm really open with the fact that I have hearing issues, that I know I need to get hearing aids. I need them now. I definitely am going to get them within the next couple years. Before I turn 50, I will have them. And I'm 46 right now. I'll be turning 47 in September. And my dad had terrible hearing. My grandfather had terrible hearing. Right now, our next door neighbor that we love dearly has terrible hearing. And it sucks because it takes the joy of being around people away. When you can't communicate, you can't hear someone, you're yelling at them, it makes talking to people like you don't want to. And I know that, when you have grandparents, like when we used to love having our next door neighbor over for our special occasions, and now it's hard because she's not wearing her hearing aids. I don't think she likes them. And so it makes it really difficult to communicate. And I know for me, I don't want to be a burden like that on people. I already know that I'm annoying. Chad, he's like, you need a now. And I know that. I don't want to be that burden. I don't want to constantly make people repeat themselves. And I also, even back when I was living in California, this is like 15 years ago. Well, I mean, I was living in California less than a decade, but when I was in LA, that was a good 15 years ago. And I remember even then I was I was in my late 20s, early 30s at that point. It was really, I think, my early 30s that I remember this. And I remember some of my friends inviting me out to this bar in Venice. And I remember not wanting to go specifically because I knew I wouldn't be able to hear people. And I'd be like, what? Why can you repeat? That is the worst. I'm not in those types of environments as much anymore. I'm not in these really, really overly crowded bars. I'm usually now in restaurants where I'm sitting, and it's a lot easier. I can read people's lips, and I actually rely on that. I had this interview the other day with this guy, and he was off camera talking, and for some reason, the amplification of his voice was not he was on his phone. It was this weird echoey room. And I was having a lot of trouble understanding him. I said, hey, do you mind just staying on camera so I can see what you're saying? It does help me to read those lips. So all this to say, I do realize I need to do something about this in the near future. And especially because I have heard just through social media that it's tied to dementia. And so Gary, the Ultimate Human podcast, Gary Brecka, had a topic in an episode with his Brandon Sawalich guy, Starkey Hearing Technologies, and he wanted to talk about this. And so they started out just saying how people don't understand the connection between the brain and hearing. And a lot of people don't want to address this or talk about this because it means you're getting old, right? And I've talked to people that have had, veterans that need hearing aids because they've served in a war, and they're my age, they're in their 40s, but they have these hearing aids. And some of them I haven't been able to detect. The hearing aids these days are much better than they used to be. But usually people do associate hearing loss with getting old, right? So there's always been that stigma about it. And this Brandon guy that was on this show was talking about how people don't take it as seriously as other health concerns because it's not something you have to immediately address, because it's people don't associate it with death and dying and being something that you need to take care of now to prevent that. So they mentioned a fact that untreated hearing loss is the single most modifiable risk factor for dementia, right? The easiest thing that you can address to mitigate your chances of dementia. And that was in this new research study from the Lancet that Gary Brecka loves to talk about research and is very science-based. I will say I was not impressed by the CEO. I could tell Gary wanted more from him, more big fancy words, or more of the real deep science behind this technology. And this guy was not delivering at all. Because Gary's I'd love you to walk me through the physiology of this. I mean, I do understand how isolation can play into getting dementia, but what's the actual science behind how hearing loss, potentially increases the risk of dementia? And Brandon's well, we hear with our brains. Out of all the 5 senses, he's they're all important, but it's how we connect with people. And he said it's actually the fitness for our brain. He did use those words, the fitness for our brain, which, again, I think it's important for people to break things down so that laymen can understand them. But sometimes you're well, that doesn't sound very scientific. And you want that sometimes from an owner of a company. But again, anyway, I'm being a little bit critical, but they talked about how people usually wait 7 years to do something about their hearing loss. I mean, I've known about it for even longer. I know that I've needed to do something, but they talk about how it affects your mental health because you start withdrawing. Hello, the story I just told. You put yourself in situations and positions where you don't have to interrupt to ask people to repeat themselves. And then you start forgetting sounds. And obviously they're talking about the extreme version of this as people get older and start to isolate more in a typical story. Mark talks about how they used to have to shout at his grandfather to get him to hear because he had lost his hearing from the war. And he said as he got into his 80s, he became very reclusive. And he said some people around him almost talked to him like he was a baby, and just because he couldn't hear, as if he couldn't understand. And she's like, I just remember I could tell that really irritated him. And so Brandon talked about how once people lose their hearing, you just don't get it back, regardless of whether it's genetic or it's something that, is noise induced. He said 1 out of 5 teenagers have hearing loss because of headphones, going to loud concerts. Mark wanted to know what his opinion of these earbuds and things that people are using now. He's like, and if you do get your hearing tested and you're starting to see that frequencies are, you're not able to hear certain frequencies, like, what do you do about that? And Brandon's like, well, you do want to see an audiologist, a hearing professional. He's like, sometimes it's an earwax issue. He's like, sometimes that can be addressed. He goes, what they're going to talk about if they do notice hearing loss is solutions, which is, which are hearing aids. And he said, obviously there is a lot of stigma, but today's hearing aids are very different from your grandfather's. He's like, these devices have over 300 components. They're very advanced. There's AI built into them. And then he started selling his companies. Like, we're the first AI, to bring AI into these technologies. And he said the old science, the old versions would just amplify the sound. He said now we're able to personalize the sound for the listener. Mark said what I see advertised is hearing aids that won't pick up the surrounding sounds where, if somebody drops a knife, you're not necessarily going to be focused on that. It's more that you're able to focus on the people talking in front of you. And Brandon talked about, yes, there are some that help you focus on the fact that you're having a conversation, and they're smart enough to recognize that, tune out the other sounds that are coming in and make it more speech focused. Mark talked about one of the cool features he thought was that he said that he got tested for these, and he has a housekeeper that's Portuguese and can speak fluently in Portuguese. And when he put these hearing aids in, that it had a translation feature where she could speak in fluent Portuguese and he could understand almost to the word what she was saying. Now that is a really cool feature, especially as I begin to travel more. He's like, that's James Bond type stuff. But they talked about how there's a lot of ways people can have hearing loss, brain injuries, concussions, illness, genetics. There's even some medications that can affect your hearing loss. Mark's like, what are those medications, Brandon? And Brandon literally could not even say what they were. He's like, oh, some pain medications. I don't know, they talk about it on TV. Mark was gracious. He moved on. But again, if you're a guest on a podcast, don't bring something up unless you know a lot about it, because if you get asked about it and you don't know the answers, you're going to look like an idiot. He should know the classifications of medications that cause hearing loss if he's going to go on a pod, and he's the CEO or president of this company. I mean, come on. Anyway, Now, Mark really wanted to talk about tinnitus. He's like, some people are just debilitated by this. And Brandon talked about how we can mask it with our technology. I've seen some people that are absolutely cannot function in life because of tinnitus. And he goes, and these technologies help them to be able to function again. And Mark did not want to leave this topic. He's like, he's like, I have clients with just unrelenting tinnitus where he's like, I've seen it literally destroy people's lives. He's like, how do you mitigate this? And Brandon talked about depends on the person's awareness to their environment, what is their genetic makeup. There's a lot of pathways for this. He's like, you see a lot of products advertised. He's like, nothing cures it. He goes, but masking it and suppressing it is the best you're going to get. So Mark's like, okay, so you're trying to match it in order to tune it out. And he's like, Mark wanted a better answer than that, but that was the answer that Brandon just kept going back to. It basically matches the frequency of the tinnitus to help hopefully drown it out for people. And again, I don't know a lot about this stuff, so he did talk about how there's some technologies that can help prevent fall risks, track biometrics. He's like, where does that information go and how is it actionable? This is Mark asking Brandon, because Mark is very data driven. He's all about optimizing his health. And Brandon's like, well, when we created our technology, we wanted it to be multi-purpose. He's like, if you think of like Jarvis from Iron Man, he's like, that's where we want it to go. We want it to be your personal assistant, helping you with productivity. So it's so funny that he talks about this insanely advanced technology on Iron Man. And then when Mark really presses him on like what kind of biometrics he's actually getting, he's like, are you measuring temperature? He's like, I mean, you must be doing some sort of data analysis if you're mitigating fall risks. And Brandon's like, well, there's sensors. He's like, if someone falls when they're wearing a device, it sends a text to their 3 family members. He's like, we can do heart rate, temperature, step counting. He's like, there's features there for specific demographics. And so, I mean, again, these are very, like, everything he just said is really, really basic. The coolest thing I heard of was the language feature, right? Being able to translate. But all this other stuff is like, well, we've had pedometers that do some of this stuff. I mean, I just think it's funny because from the last company I owned, I was taught by these people that had been in technology for a while, like sell ahead of the technology. So part of me is like me seeing through some of his answers and being like, okay, you're definitely selling ahead of what this technology can do right now. But he's like, getting back to mental health, he's like, it can detect the tone of your sound throughout the day and, whether you're sad or you're down or depressed, and it can give you feedback through the app. So again, some of this stuff I was like, not that impressive. Mark, asked him how often we should get our hearing tested. Brandon said once a year is important. And again, Mark wanted to go back to the tinnitus conversation, asking him what age we should start testing, what are some of the classic risk factors. He's like, obviously, if you're a DJ at a nightclub, obviously your risk factors are going to be higher than, somebody that just has a desk job. But really I was hoping for more of the science behind how it effectuates dementia as well. What it seems to come down to is the mental health piece. Throughout this, again, Mark wanted causality for dementia, for, a solution for tinnitus. Brandon had to basically talk about, with dementia, the mental health piece, becoming reclusive, withdrawing from society, how that causes depression, isolation. You use less words, you start to forget what sounds sound like. So it's a lot of those added factors. It's not like there's some sort of scientific way that hearing loss actually causes dementia. It's more of the social behaviors around what hearing loss does to you. So that was interesting. And this the fact that when I was in, 10 years ago, I was understanding how that was affecting me just socializing with my friends and going out. So I do understand that. And it doesn't have to be some complicated reason, right? That's enough for me. Like I know I'm not one of those people that I'm in denial. I'm not going to do something. For me, it is more about affordability. The most insurance companies will never pay for hearing aids. Thankfully, I believe that my insurance that I will have, I think right now it would even cover it. I don't have the best, I'm not getting the best coverage. Next year, when I'm allowed to have full benefits and I'm full time, I am going to, I'm pretty sure that there's a generous allotment for hearing aid coverage, which again is quite unheard of. So I'm going to definitely take advantage of that. And, with my hair, no one will ever know I'm wearing hearing aids, right? Like I can cover it very easily. I like to wear my hair down, or I'm sorry, to the side, but even then it would be very easy to cover these things. So for me, it's not necessarily vanity or the fact that I think it's because I'm getting old. Like I know it's genetic and I know I need to do something about it. And this was just a reminder when I saw the topic for that episode. I'm like, and if my sharing how I'm going to get them and I'm very open with my hearing loss can help anyone else break the stigma out there, fantastic. I will share my journey once I go down this pathway of getting them, how it feels, do they actually help me, do I feel stigma, all of that. I'll dissect that on this show. But that is the show. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a rating and review for the show. Consider subscribing to Craving More or Craving More VIP through Apple Podcasts, Patreon, wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow me on Instagram at the Diet Obsessed Podcast. DM me if you have any ideas for topics or shows you want me to cover. Subscribe on YouTube. Really, really helps. Leave a rating or review on iTunes. That really helps the show. And until we meet again, I hope all of you have a very balanced week.